Hi, good afternoon. This is your County Executive Ed Day. We have a weekly COVID-19 update for you. Anybody who's been paying attention, my apologies first of all about being a little tardy. Anybody who saw the governor speak today would know why we're a bit tardy. We had a very, very active morning and afternoon today, and we have to go at about 4:45 because we have our daily conference call with the governor's staff as a follow-up to today's announcements. First of all, it was a very pleasant surprise today. I will tell you this, government is a collaborative body. We attempt to work together as best we can, and that could mean state, village, town, county governments, municipalities of all types, school districts and the like. It is very difficult at times to try to get things to all going in the same direction. We have spent some time over the past few weeks speaking of the concerns we had here in Rockland and other counties with the governor's staff. We have spoke about that many times here. There were a few issues that we brought up, and today I received a phone call from Governor Cuomo this morning about 11:30 in the morning, and we got a chance to speak. He expressed his concerns, some of the things that he was seeing, some of the concerns you and I and others also share. He was committed to making an effort, a strong effort, to make sure that we take our best steps to stop this virus cold. And I'm happy to report to you today that he has done that. If you have not seen his press conference today, we're going to give you a brief update on what he said. And essentially what he's done, he looked to strategize and attempt to get some very tight zones to be looked at, that we see the same numbers coming out here in Rockland County through our own. The issues that we have here, he has created what they're calling a cluster action initiative. The approach is not dissimilar to what we talked about in April of this year when we wanted to have a containment area in certain areas based upon actual findings, not based upon zip codes, not based upon census tracts, but more based upon the actual experience we had. Over time, both the state and the county has a better opportunity to do that, get that information. We fine-tune those things. So what essentially has happened here, and I'm going to just read off the print that we got. Based on activity, there's going to be 3 different areas created in this cluster action initiative. The main area is a red zone, which is where the cluster actually is. Then there's a buffer zone. There are a couple of buffer zones, and again, this is brand new to me also, but the language being used is red closure zones to shut the spread down, and then there will be additional zones that serve as buffer zones, and the buffers will be yellow and green. Orange and green. Orange. No. Why did it have yellow here for?
It looks green.
It is green, but the word yellow's in there. So we have a red zone, an orange zone, and a yellow zone. Red being the area of most concern, where the most definitive action is happening when it comes to the viral infections. The orange zone, which is the next spot out, and then the yellow zone, which is a bit further away. They describe the red zone typically a mile in diameter. When you add the orange to it, it's about 1.5 miles. When you add the yellow to it, it's about 2 miles in its circumference, basically. And again, these will be neighborhood drawings. I don't know if they'll be circles or not. We have not seen the maps yet. The maps will be sent to us hopefully by the end of the day. We will review those maps. We'll give input as to any change you may wish to see. And this is predicated upon the fact that we resisted the issue of zip codes because zip codes are not accurate. I might have mentioned this before. Suffering has gotten a lot of attention. I think has been number 3 spot in Rockland, but the Suffering that you and I both know, that corridor in Route 59 has about 10% of the infections. So that is not where the issue is. I can tell you, and I was very pleased to hear this because I've brought this up here for all of you. The governor was very adamant that he said that he does not want to do the zip code approach. He actually said the zip code approach is stupid. He attributed it to another politician, but I won't embarrass him by saying who it was. But they're using the actual data, and it's going to be broken down to maps. And briefly, for red zones, worship types of activity. Worship be 25 capacity, a 10-person maximum. Mass gatherings are prohibited in the red zones. Businesses, only essential businesses will be open in the red zones. Dining will be takeout only. Schools will be closed and remote only. Now, I will tell you, the red zones right now are within the town of Ramapo, predominantly in the zip codes of 10952, 10977. Exactly where you see on the dashboard now is basically where the red zone and the accompanying orange and yellow zones will be, with fine tuning. So this is not something for Stony Point or for Haverstraw or Clarkstown at this juncture. Okay, the orange zone, which is the next step away from the red zone, the first buffer. Worship is at 33% capacity with a 25-person maximum. Mass gatherings would be 10 people, no more. Businesses closing high-risk, non-essential businesses, gyms, and personal care, etc. And dining will be outdoor dining only, 4 persons maximum per table. Also, schools will be closed remote only. This would be the orange zone. And the furthest away from the red zone is the yellow zone. That's at 50% capacity for worship, 25-person maximum indoors and outdoors for mass gatherings. Businesses will be open. Dining, indoor and outdoor dining, 4-person maximum per table. And schools will be open. Mandatory weekly testing of students and teachers for in-person settings. Now, we had spoken about the schools. The schools had plans for testing as needed, but the plans didn't have a structure underneath it. So that is presented a problem because there is nothing in place right now. So that is something the governor has made very clear to the schools. They're going to have to make sure that gets done. Again, we will be getting the maps. We'll be getting more information. I want to get this out to you as rapidly as possible. We will look at these maps, and we're going to make every effort to ensure that the notifications go out by the close of business tomorrow. That'll be predicated upon the state getting back to us if we see adjustments that are necessary. For example, as I said, something like Suffern, which would possibly be on the very edge of the buffer area that they're talking about, and should not be. So things such as that, because this could bleed either east and westbound, which takes it towards Suffern on the west, takes it towards Clarkstown on the east. So we have to take a good look at these maps and make sure they make sense. We're not looking to skirt around any issues. We're not looking to show favoritism to anybody. We're looking to make sure the maps make sense, that the concern for spread from a red zone is consistent where the protection is going to be going with the buffer zones. If you know for a fact that people in a certain area just don't travel to another area that's a half a mile away, it will be illogical to have a buffer zone there. So that's what we need to assess immediately tomorrow when we get these maps in, and go from there. And then we'll review them and make sure that there's compliance with the intent of the effort for the maps. As I mentioned earlier, they'll be using actual data. Now, we will be communicating with the school districts affected, and also the town of Ramapo right now. The governor made it very clear again, and for those who doubt this, he said that the local government does not have the authority to initiate plans. That is just a fact. He repeated it more than once. He spoke of the mayor of New York City's initiative that he's put out there, and he made it clear the mayor has no authority under the governor's emergency orders to create those plans. And he went on to say neither do county executives or other elect town supervisors or anybody else for that matter. That power has been suspended. That section of Executive Law 24, as I recollect, has been suspended. So we're working with the governor and his people right now. Again, what we have here a logical approach right now, and frankly, it's a necessary approach right now. So for those of you who've been asking repeatedly, what is going to be done to enforce this? The enforcement is now here. Okay, the state police will be overseeing the enforcement at the governor's direction. I've already conversed with Sheriff Falco and also with the Ramapo. I have not been able to reach Chief Wydell yet, but again, properly so, I reached out to Supervisor Specht, so they can inform Chief Wydell, and Lou Falco already, Sheriff Falco already understands what's going to happen. What's going to happen here, the state police will be reaching out to both those departments through the sheriff and through the chief. They'll be laying out the plans that they have for enforcement, of the governor's orders. There will be mutual aid offered up by both the sheriff and by the town of Ramapo Police Department to basically make sure the mission works, and that's where that's going. So you will have a full involvement of law enforcement in that matter. Also, there's been some concerns raised regarding the prosecutorial piece of this when it comes to local district attorneys. We have heard some, again, not confirmed information, anecdotal information, that some district attorneys in the state are not prosecuting any of the fines or summonses that have been issued to date in the state. The governor directly assured me that he will speak to the district attorneys to make sure they understand that it is their job to enforce these laws. And if there's any issues with those orders, the governor made it very clear to me he will deal with it directly and make sure that that matter is corrected. So again, I can't give you a sense of exactly how much of that is happening right now, but it clearly are some concerns have been raised in the law enforcement community, which obviously I do have some connection to, and so what I'm hearing is I have concerns with. But the governor was very, very clear and very adamant about that. So right now, again, that's where we are right now. This is a matter that has just developed. I wish I could give you more information. When we do have the information, we will get it out to you. But right now, we will be making notifications. We're taking that upon itself. There's no mandate for the county to make those notifications, but we feel it's the appropriate and the right thing to do. So whatever we can do to get the information out as rapidly as possible, we're going to do that, whether it be on traditional press releases, social media, and the like. We also are asking our partners in government, our towns and villages, to do the same thing to get the word out as rapidly as possible. We'll be communicating with BOCES to get the word out to the school districts. We don't know where those lines are going to be. Now, if you picture the Muncie and the New Square areas in Rockland County, New Square is right on the border of Clarkstown, so we don't know how far east that boundary is going to go. So it's going to be a very challenging situation right now. This is why it's so important that we don't have unintended consequences on other areas of this county. If there is an issue in any one area that's a red zone area, that is going to be addressed. The buffer areas, if necessary, should be maintained. But I want to make sure that the intent of the initiative that the governor and I personally spoke about today is carried out, and that's really what this comes down to. So we'll look at the entirety of it all and make sure that it is the intent of the initiative complies with what the real concerns are as it relates to this. John, did I miss anything? I need help today because this has been rapidly developing.
Absolutely. Things have been changing very, very frequently here throughout the day. I would ask that you just, a number of people have joined us midway through here, that you just reiterate that we don't know exactly what areas this is yet. The governor referenced maps based on the specific case data we're seeing, but we haven't seen those maps. We don't know exactly what they look like yet.
We, in the conversations I had with Governor Cuomo this morning, it's pretty clear the areas are, the red areas will be somewhere within the zip codes of 10977, 10952. That is just the general sense. The fine tuning of it all, as I was speaking about earlier, is in the process of being done. It's the governor's wish, and I agree with him, to get this information out as rapidly as possible. So as soon as we get it, we're going to comb right through it and go from there. But we don't have the final product. And again, I'm just going to reiterate that it's my position, and I believe the governor will support this based upon the conversation we had today, which was about 20 minutes or so, almost a half an hour. That we will have areas drawn out that are effective. We want to make sure that if we have a red area, that high impact area, and then we're going to create orange and yellow buffers, or any kind of buffer on the area. The buffers are placed in such an area that is effective, that it makes sense, that this is where someone who is in that red zone area is going to shop, going to visit, going to patronize, going to travel through. Obviously, it's not 100%. We can't. There's no way this can be drawn up perfectly. But the approach makes sense. It's very similar to people looked at, had mentioned this to me back in April of this year, when we had what we looked at the containment zone. The way we were drawing it up was, again, using not zip codes, but neighborhoods. We didn't have some of the technology available to us then that we have now. but the same precepts are being applied. It's areas where that there is a defined issue based upon addresses. Now, they can't release addresses. You've heard me say this even with our own information. That's how finely tuned this information is. We can't release addresses because that would be a violation of federal statute by compromising people who have a right to be private when they are sick. So using that information, to draw these maps or draw these areas will be done. And again, the only thing we're going to look at that point, we know data is good, but common sense is better. We want to make sure that the concerns expressed by the data it's called out is translated properly onto a map that will be enforced.
And additionally, I just want to reiterate that besides the governor's office, we've been talking to town officials,
yes,
community members, religious leaders. We've been having these conversations for months, weeks,
yeah,
months,
absolutely,
throughout as this is ongoing. So blanket statements that people are not cooperating, that people are not involved, are just not accurate. Right. We see cases in every community in Rockland County. Thankfully, they are small within most of them, and we are now focusing on the areas with the highest case totals.
And again, to John's point, we have been having meetings through early September, I guess it was, and the facts of the matter is our government officials have been very open to us. So we just had a situation up in Clark and West Nyack. We got calls here about a large gathering. I reached out immediately. We reached out immediately to the town supervisor's office. I got a follow-up phone call from George Holman, and it works. We were doing this. So it's not been perfect. I'm not even going to make any apologies for that. Obviously, some areas are working better than others. Some areas of the effort. But at the end of the day, right now, the governor has made it very clear he's putting his full weight behind this, regardless of any other dynamics that are involved. And I think we're all glad to hear that, because that has been a major issue. He makes references to politics, the politics of what's going on, and some things don't happen because it's political. He made it very clear that that's not going to cut it, and he'll take the lead on that. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to see it. It's critically important that we get this virus under control. The numbers are starting to grow to exponentially. We don't need that right now. We make great progress and great strides here, so we want to make sure we continue that we stop this virus cold, and that we start returning back to the numbers that we had before. So, but again, I want to reiterate, we have routine conference calls with our town supervisors, our village mayors. We fill them in on things that have been going on. We get input back from them. They let us know what they're doing. Right now, most of our localities are town and village governments, which again are ultimately responsible for the enforcement of these governor's orders as a matter of course. They have their own law enforcement personnel. They have their building inspectors, zoning inspectors. Some are using fire inspectors. And as I had mentioned many times before, I suggested to them to use anybody who travels during the course of the business should be engaged in some aspect of this effort, whether it be just simply sticking their head into a local business and make sure that what they say they're doing, they in fact are doing, that what's going on makes sense. So, again, I want people to understand, again, I said from the outset, sometimes it takes time for various levels of government to get together, work together, and try to get it done. It's not for lack of trying. It's some things we don't talk about publicly. We may have disagreements privately. We don't go out and blast it on Facebook all the time. We talk about it privately and try to come to concurrence. And I will point out very simply, Sunday I got a phone call from one of the governor's staffers. Obviously I was home. He filled me in on some of the things going on. I spoke to him about a number of issues. One of the issues was the issue of the zip codes. That the zip code is not the best way to identify where your issues are. Clearly, he brought that back to the governor, and I want to acknowledge that particular staff for making sure that message got back. I've gotten calls today from senior counsel for the governor's office too, as a follow-up to make sure that we're all on the same page. The governor assured me that he wants to work together with us. This has been a revelation in many ways to me, and again, the governor is chief executive officer of the state. I'm the chief executive officer of this county. We're both executives. We both have our own commands, as it were, to make sure we get work done. The idea here is to work together. And today, I think, was a watershed event in many ways as it relates to the battle against COVID. So I have a good feeling about this, and we will do our part here in Rockland. I know our towns and our villages will do the same, and as will our school systems, our religious leaders, of all faiths, because many could be affected, not just from one faith. So we have to look at those maps, make sure they make sense the best we can. We can't tell the state what to do, but we can certainly advise them that if we see a glitch in there that doesn't look like a fit, we are happy to share that with them, and hopefully they will yield to our observation as a locality. That's really what this comes down to. An overhead effort from Albany with an absolute involvement in a partnership with the local government. That is what we have spoken about a number of times that we felt was not as strong as it should have been. Well, today, like I said, today was a completely different approach. And I disagree with the governor. I agree with him in this particular case. I will say definitely my hat's off to him for this approach.
The one thing that I'd like to tack on here at the end is, while government is doing everything they can to, focus on these areas that need attention and need help and need enforcement, government cannot be everywhere at once. There's a matter of personal responsibility here.
That's right, and it's absolutely true. The laws typically are handled by the law-abiding. They always deal with that. But again, this is something nobody expected. When nobody woke up, back in January and said, "Gee whiz, I'm going to have to walk around wear a mask all day." Nobody ever conceived of this. This is very unusual. But again, the responsibility at the end of the day is yours. We cannot be everywhere. Your local police, your health department officials, your inspectors, they cannot be everywhere. And frankly, they don't want to get in your face and tell you to put a mask on. Whatever you may feel about it, apparently it works. It seemingly works right now. That's the best information we have. As I said, we do not have immunizations yet. We do not have national immunity yet. We only have common sense efforts. Keep your face out of somebody else's face. Wash your hands. Don't touch your eyes. Keep a 6-foot distance between you and your fellow man or woman. And just try not to interact so closely that you're going to pick up a germ that they may have, or they pick up a germ from you that you may have. So with that, I'll close it with one more thing. John's pointing. You want to go first, John?
One more thing. Additionally, if you are sick, please stay home. Call out of work. Right. Use those sick days. I know I feel guilty when I call in sick. I know other people feel that way too.
He doesn't feel guilty.
But please, if you feel sick, please stay home, because you don't always know that you're sick with this. But that first symptom, stay home. If you're concerned, get tested. Do what you have to do to protect yourself and everyone else you come into contact with.
And you're going to have an extensive complement of law enforcement personnel here in Rockland County. The state police will be buffering up our presence we have here right now between our town and village departments and our sheriff. 1-833-789-0470. That is the New York State hotline. If you see something, and you can either call the police right then and there. If it's something that's ongoing that needs something of an investigation, call the New York State hotline. That information is conveyed down to our district attorney, our sheriff, and a health department. They will vet the information and they will go out and respond. That is largely handled by either the sheriff or the local departments once they vet the information. But again, the number is 833-789-0470. So with that, I have a conference call with the governor's staff coming up now. We're going to follow up a lot of this information. We'll get this information out to you through the normal standard channels that we use as quickly as we can. And with that, again, I'm going to take off and get that done, and we're going to go from there, right? Everybody stay well and be healthy.